just like to present a slide on the history of the destruction of the Black community, and we will be going over some of these events as I continue my speech. I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. Martin Luther King. As we know, protests demanding justice for George Floyd, a Black man killed at the hands of a white police officer, have broken out among the United States. In addition to peaceful protests, rioting and looting has also begun, in effect destroying jobs, property, and even human lives within the Black community. Instead of rioting and looting, and even protesting on the streets, the Black community should speak to legislators, run for public office, and be more involved in the local, state, and federal decision-making. So when it comes down to the destruction of Black businesses, we want to look at the heart of the issue, which was in Minneapolis, Minnesota, where so many investments in the ethical community were ruined by rioters and looters. From a Minneapolis editorial, they say ethnically diverse neighborhoods are grappling with the loss of jobs, services, and investments. This is in addition to the COVID-19 outbreak and pandemic, which concluded with the order of a stay-at-home recommendation that shut down many businesses operating within these communities. In Atlanta, a Janice Wilborn said, "We are here for God. This is our ministry. This is our family legacy." The Wilborn sisters owned a dress shop in downtown Atlanta, and they were also victims of the rioting and the looting. For them, their business was more of a ministry for Christ, and now they're not able to do what they were doing down in Buckhead, which is a shopping center in Atlanta. What I've also been noticing as I've been doing my research is that a lot of the more upscale and white neighborhoods have barely been or even not been touched. In fact, in Rodeo Drive, according to the LA Times, police were blocking and creating a blockade to Rodeo Drive, and only a few stores were not even completely vandalized, but only partially. So then, as we go back and look at Minneapolis, we see that Anthony's Pipe and Cigar Lounge, which was on Westlake in Minneapolis, was also destroyed. This man, Tom Harlan, has been doing business there for 35 years. Not only did we destroy the economy in Minneapolis, but also we destroyed people's livelihoods when they riot and protest. So a man who has been on that street for 35 years no longer has a check coming in, whether it be every month, every 2 weeks. And we want to ask ourselves, where will he find his next meal or his next check? We also want to talk about the 1855 Seneca Village destruction that paved the way for gentrification. As you can see, I have a kind of illustration of what gentrification is, and it's when there's a destruction or something in a neighborhood, which usually happens to be the African or an ethical neighborhood. Then the wealthy people in the city, who are usually predominantly white, come in and they restore the neighborhood to make multi-million-dollar condos, and they create a whole economy within itself. And that's exactly what happened in the 1855 Seneca Village destruction, when the whole community of Black property owners, whether it was cattle, whether it was land, who were actually really away from the more racist and racist community, when their community was destroyed, then they used that property for the building of Central Park. Now that I have explained how detrimental riots and looting is, and how it can hurt us economically, I will now tell you about the loss of livelihood and how it can cause suicide rates to rise. Now, there is a proven fact that situations such as a pandemic or even a recession can affect the income in the earnings of the citizens or the economies that are around it. But it can also affect the suicide rates. And as we see on our chart here, we have post-2008 recession and how the suicide rates are really off the chart per 100,000. The United States is in the second column, which is 13 to 25 per 100,000 people. According to the Veterans Affairs Suicide Prevention Handout, unemployment can be detrimental to mental health. It can also cause anxiety and job insecurity, as well as not being able to find a job, and also not being able to provide or be eligible for federal programs, and as well leads to isolation, which can also affect mental health. In addition to suicide, we also have crime that is usually on the rise. Again, using the 2008 recession as well as the COVID-19 type situations as references. During any major recession or economic pause, there's an increase in crime and career criminals. During the 2008 recession, it was more of a property crime because that's what people were losing. They were losing their property. And now that I've explained about suicide rates on the rise, as well as looting and the damaging of the economic systems, I want to pose a solution to the problem. We must, as African Americans, begin to participate in our local governments. After Reconstruction, we had the first Black man in 1870, Hiram Rhodes Rebels, be a member of Congress. Over the next 10 years, 15 more Black men were elected, which I believe maintained and sustained the Civil Rights Act of 1866. And more modernly, we have Martin Luther King and those who participated in the Civil Rights Movement that not only met with legislators or ran as legislators, but also gave speeches and testified in front of legislative caucuses. And that, I also believe, sustained the Civil Rights Act of 1964. So as we look at the situation as a whole, we have a very extreme injustice happening, and we also have both positive and negative responses to it. However, the negative, which is the rioting and the looting, can really destroy our communities as African Americans, not only on the physical aspects, but also as human lives. As a young Black woman in America, it is hard to see my people destroy their own communities and allow for the further destruction of their homes, businesses, and lives during a time that should be meant for peaceful mourning and justice seeking.